what they did come together on is that race in itself was good for business, and it was a justifiable set of arrangements that allowed it to permeate, that allowed it to take root, because without race you don't have the othering of a different group of people. So I don't think it had anything to do with race. I think race was created to justify slavery. What's good? It's your boy, the Black Anglo-Saxon, your favorite neighborhood political scientist, and I'm back here again today with another video from the hood to the hill. Today we're going to be going over the CNN engagement that I saw online that really has me a little bit flabbergasted that we still are here in 2025 and people not understanding, certain dynamics as it relates to slavery and history. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead, jump into it, but before I do, please hit the like button, please hit the share button, and please subscribe. I appreciate it, please, and thank you. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in.
So we now have some random person deciding what is appropriate for the Smithsonian to teach in terms of American history, things that don't offend parts of the MAGA base, right? So we're now literally reviewing parts of American history and parts of American culture to make sure it comports with dear leader and what the MAGA
Can we address
wants.
some of those things that are in there? Because have you looked at some of the things that are being reviewed?
Slavery was a bad thing that we should talk about.
Okay.
Like, forgive me
he's
for
not
saying
whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No.
Okay.
He's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you
can't tie slavery.
Let's talk about the fact.
Slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You know
have
that
a very
slavery
serious
is
problem.
thousands of years old.
White people.
Was the first race to try to end slavery?
Wait a second.
I'm very surprised.
As an historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Do you realize that
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and
I'm
who
not.
was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
in the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of.
So I think the first things first that people mistake when they are having these conversations or trying to have these conversations, what gets lost is that a lot of people are not necessarily talking about, they reframe it to kind of deflect. It's not about all white people being bad, but when we talk about and have a discussion around, as they sound like they're about to get into, when you talk about the context of slavery within America, it was very different than slavery that has transpired across any moment in any set and given time, just based on how it was arranged and industrialized, meaning that other forms of slavery were closer to levels of indentured servitude where you could work your way out of it. Or you also didn't have this dynamic where your children were born into slavery as well. And so what also happens in America that I think is unique that a lot of people miss and glaze over is the fact that the race in itself is a concept that is inherent to America. But in the creation of race to justify slavery, it got codified into law, into the economy, into each and every single ecosystem. So you have it entrenched into the finance system, you have it entrenched into the legal codes, and you have it entrenched into the social dynamics. And I think that's a very staunch caveat. So in large part, when she says all white people bad, to some extent, especially if you take the American context, yes, white people can be synonymous with bad in the sense that you have to understand that the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant invented whiteness. And so it in itself puts you all within that category. But when we're talking about race, again, it is not that all white people are bad. Everybody understands that people got killed for being N-word lovers, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have to acknowledge and accept and just be honest and upfront that a lot of you all, as a result of being targeted for helping Negroes and people like that read, you gained some type of benefit, social benefit, by not participating in the association with the Negro. And so it's a little bit disingenuous when people get into it in that way. But it's interesting to hear her kind of frame it as that, because it's starting off on a bad faith argument. It's starting off on a deflection. And she's also trying to move it into a space where we're talking about all different forms and all different lanes of slavery, which again, we respect all different slaveries that has happened, but American chattel slavery is a completely different monster, is a completely different beast, and in large part is responsible for America's dominance at such a young age as a nation. And so I think we have to keep that in mind and keep that in context when we have these conversations, and not just focus on the deflecting pieces of when you hear somebody saying it, that you're not associated with people are saying all white people are bad. No, what is being said and what is trying to be articulated, or at least I'll assume, is that white people in the creation of race have launched a system that has captured not only African Americans, ADOS, Black people in America, but has translated and permeated across the globe as a result. So without, I'm gonna go ahead and just jump back into this real quick. Boom, boom.
Every single one. Like people migrated from Cuba because white people bad. Not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there. That's what I'm saying. You don't actually know what's in there. Do you know that when you walk in the
Jillian,
front door, first thing you see is the gate? I do. Here's my
That Fidel piece is again
change your
caveat.
game, right? This has been an installation there. Is gender testing fair in sports? Does that, and then it goes on to talk about how it's complex to do gender testing in sports.
All right. So I don't know where it's going. I don't know where it's going. Like, I don't know. I hope this, if she bring it in and it make sense for me, that's going to be amazing.
It's not complex. It's basic science. That's untrue. It's XX chromosome, XY chromosome. That's sports. Is it fair to have biological men competing against biological women in sports? No. But why is this in the Smithsonian? So it's, look, it's been completely captured.
First of all, I don't.
What does that have to do with anything?
We don't.
First of all, we don't have time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument.
No.
Everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
Excuse me.
It's like, I can't believe you're trying to suggest, that slavery is a good thing.
You brought up race.
No,
this was a conversation about the arts, and you brought up race.
It isn't.
You brought up.
But the whole point of this is that the issue
you brought up slavery, and you brought up the question of whether you brought up the question of whether or not slavery in the United States is about race. The answer is
no,
yes.
I did not say
in the United States.
Don't straw man my argument, because that's not.
So what I will say to that, right, is that I personally disagree that slavery in America is about race. And I say that largely because it's not so much as it is about race. It's not so much as it is about a group of people who think that they are superior. It doesn't have most to do with the fact that these people, the others, have created a caste system to justify and further their endeavor of what is a business, right? And I know that may sound crazy, but it has more to do with the business. It has more to do with the money. It has more to do with the power. And I say that because when you realize that white people don't necessarily believe, or even in the past, when you see the different conversations that were had with even the founders, that they actually believed that they were superior or that they believed it was correct. What they did come together on is that race in itself was good for business, and it was a justifiable set of arrangements that allowed it to permeate, that allow it to take root, because without race you don't have the othering of a different group of people. So I don't think it had anything to do with race. I think race was created to justify slavery. And I think that's very important, just because a lot of people miss the mark when they have that conversation. And I think it is due to, again, with all due respect, because I am Black myself, I understand the triggered response into making it about our identity. But it is not about our identity. White people understand that Black people have viability. White people understand that Black people have things to offer. White people understand that Black people work 10, 14, 20, 100 times as hard. All of those things are understood, because it was never about really thinking that they are superior. It is just about creating race where I can put narratives into and justify this business endeavor, and then have it transcend and take on a life of its own. And now, as we find ourselves in 2025, it just capitalizes on itself over and over and over again, which is why you always hear me talk about the fact that it is institutional protocol that people are following, but they don't necessarily and are not always conscious and aware of the isms and the models, whether it be business or social models, that they are engaging in and perpetrating, because they are just going based on a set of rules of engagement that have been set forth by their actual forefathers, who also had to lie to them to uphold the narrative of race in itself. So that's how we get here, because again, it's not about race. They lied to their kids, they lied to their wives, they lied to anybody who was not in that circle of power, because they understood that it was a farce. So they understood that it was not about race. They understood that it had nothing to do with that. They understood that this thing that we're creating is just to justify the behavior that we're conducting to move forward this business model that we know, have talked about, and understood is irreprehensible, is very, 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 just debaucherous. And I think that's where a lot of white people have this weird confliction, where they understand it, but they don't really want to delve into it too deep, because the psychological ties to it, I think, is where it's like, no, you can't say all white people are bad. No, what's happening is you are living a life on blood money. You are living a life and you don't understand that you're holding a bag that doesn't necessarily move or is felt in meritocracy. You have it because these things have been laid before you. And again, it's not that you in yourself are a bad person, but the models and everything that has been used to justify, perpetuate, and mobilize you benefit from. And your deflection is a representation of that. So it's not that you're a bad person, but you are in a lot of ways an ignorant person when it comes to this. Because again, even when you talk about ignorance, she may be brilliant in some ways, But on this particular topic, on this particular subject, as it relates to what is being discussed right now, I don't think she understands it. Not in a way that doesn't trigger her. And that's just where I'm at with it right now. But we're gonna see, and we're gonna go ahead and see what they're talking about as we get back into it.
What
She brought up slavery. And what I was talking about is that this isn't really about that. When you make every single exhibit about white imperialism when it isn't relevant at all, that is a problem. So when you're talking about Cubans leaving Cuba and you make
I can see that. I can see that because I do think when you overuse it and abuse a lot of this, when people continuously call everything racist, you do butcher when things are actually racist. So that part I kind of do understand and I do agree with as it relates to people overusing, whether it be the anti-Semite term or, being racist, anti-Black. Like, I think people latch onto it a lot and it does a disservice to those things that are truly and genuinely racist. So I will agree with that.
About white people bad, that's not accurate.
Can I just say,
that's my point.
All right, we're going to move on.
I was saying on the harps thing, I think why this is.
Okay, so I think that's it, man. I think that's where we have it. And I think that, that wasn't as crazy, but I want to talk about, what comes out of that is, a lot of people will have these discussions around moving forward from the past. And the one thing that I will say is, I think one thing that the Black community, the ADOS community can learn from the Jewish community is that never forget. Because a lot of people tell us to move on, and a lot of people tell us that we should forget and neglect a lot of the different things that have taken place and stop being victims. I've heard that a lot. And it's not so much as about victimizing yourself over and over and over, but it is about acknowledging the things that have taken place and that have rooted us in this situation that have created a trajectory that we're on right now. And I think part of the solution is us being really, really honest about how we tell our history and the way in which we frame our history. It doesn't necessarily have to be that all white people are bad, but we do have to acknowledge in the fact of America, there has been this duplicitous nature. You do have your bad faith actors and you do have your white people who are ignorant, but you also have those who are intentionally ignorant. And I think that says and speaks to a lot of where we are. And just even the conversations that people have around classism versus racism, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people don't necessarily want to acknowledge race, the first level of class that was in America, because it makes a person face, especially a white person, face the actual truth that even when y'all try to make these class arguments as it relates to politics, is that you can't address class without addressing race, because America went through race to get to class, because a lot of you all are only suffering as a result now because of the things you allow to happen under the name of race. Because when it was Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, LBJ, FDR, and all of these presidents throughout, people talk about, Donald Trump being the worst that we've ever had. And the truth in the matter is that every president prior to him has been probably worse, And that's just the truth. Even when we want to go back to the Bushes, the Clintons, like I said, we can just start from the top and go to the end. And some people may rebuttal, well, we had the Abraham Lincolns, et cetera, et cetera. But again, when we talk about our history and we talk about framing it and being truthful and having integrity the way we tell it, it's like, look, Abraham Lincoln did do some good, but that good was not with the intention of doing good for Black people. It was with the intention of gutting the opposition at that moment and taking away one of their most, strong and, what do you call it? One of their largest pieces to political power and wealth. And I think that is something that we have to, really, really, really actually put into perspective. And so let me know what y'all think, man. Hit the like button, hit the share button. Please subscribe. please and thank you. I appreciate it. Y'all enjoy y'all day. And I appreciate y'all for watching, man.